Alright, we've got a Total War Warhammer 3 Siege. The Ogre Kingdoms will attempt to lay waste to this lovely Cathay settlement. We can have a look and see what we think of the Siege rework. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get to play this myself. This is footage that was sent to me by CA, so we don't get to look at things as in-depth as I would normally like to, but we can see what's going on. And if we look up in the top right corner, the first thing you can notice is the mini-map, and that this is a triple-sided siege. So that's new. We can now attack from 3 massive sides of the settlement, bringing it closer to a 360 siege. Hey, it's 270. It's close enough. We'll see if that is enough to make sieges a bit more exciting, though. So we see the Ogre Kingdom setting up here. We can see lots of Ogre units. I do have a roster video for them alongside this, where we got some close-up and some stats of all the units. Of course, you can pause the video at any time and read the stats if you wish. And we can see the Ogres being set up here, ready for a 2-sided assault on this Cathay settlement. And as we know from some of the siege rework stuff they've showed us already, if you're the defender, you'll have supplies to make barricades and towers with, so that you can set up kind of fortifications to prepare for the incoming assault. We're not going to see any of that today because we're coming from the attacking perspective, but we'll be able to at least get an idea of how sieges are going to feel. So we begin the assault. We can see an attack on this side. There's actually no towers on this side, which is a little odd. This is all development in progress as well, so anything you see here may be subject to change. We've got a whole bunch of Noblars on this side moving up. There's a Stonehorn and some Mournfang cavalry attacking from this side. And then over here we got some Gorges, but they've been spotted and shot up. But I think what I would have done with them is put them on the far side, the third side that we're not on, just by themselves, and they can actually just sneak in. Because they have Stalk, the enemy won't have a clue that they're there and they won't defend. And so you can sneak those in and open a door or take a capture point. I look forward to trying out some of those more stealthy approaches, like you could in Shogun 2 with ninjas. You could sneak them in the back door or over the back wall, and then they could sneak in, take some points, open some doors. And that should be a more viable tactic in Warhammer 3 than Warhammer 2, because there isn't really a lot of room to do that in Warhammer 2. And you can see here a bunch of units attacking doors and the walls, because there's a new wall breaker ability, which allows units to literally just smash down a wall. So they can run up to it. I'm pretty sure most Ogres have it, so you can just run them up to a wall and they'll go to town on it and create a hole in the wall. There's a giant coming up here. You can see he gets ordered to attack the wall there. And I think I like this. I think I like this as an option. I guess monstrous infantry and single large monsters will all have this trait. So that would mean the walls are much less effective in sieges than they were before. Maybe that's a good thing or maybe that's a bad thing. I'm not sure without actually playing it myself. But I think one thing that was missing from sieges is that in historical titles, you could come with some artillery and just sit back and use up all your ammo and just bombard the settlement and make those holes in the wall yourself with your artillery, and then you push in and attack. You were never able to do that in Total War Warhammer because the defense towers were always able to see you from wherever you were on the map. So it meant that you had to rush from the very start of the siege, and you didn't get time to just sit back and use your artillery and kind of plan what you were going to do based on how much you could get done with your artillery. So one thing I would have really liked to see is the tower range be shortened so that it could allow us to do that, because why do we have to rush through sieges? I'm not sure if they have done that. Maybe they will. I haven't noticed it in this video. It's hard to see the towers and their range at any point, so not entirely sure. We're busting into the settlement now. The Ogres have bashed down the walls. There's a Stonehorn coming up. These ones have got through. The walls have come down here. You can see these Mournfangs have smashed it down. And the Ogre boys be coming in. Nobbos and all. You can see they built a barricade there. They probably built some towers around. So you can now build the arrow tower fortifications within the settlement, wherever you see fit, depending on how many supplies you have and if you can afford to build them. And as you can see at the top, there's 6 red boxes. Those represent capture points all around the settlement. I believe the one on the far right is like the victory point, though. If you capture that one and hold it for a while, that one will get you victory, regardless of whether you've got the others. But if you do capture the other points, it will stop them building fortifications in those areas. So if they've got a strong cannon tower blasting all your units to pieces, you can either shoot down the tower itself, or you can take that capture point and it will destroy the fortification in the process. And I think if you take those supply points as well, it does slow down their supplies that the defender is getting, so they won't have as many supplies to be able to build stuff with as the battle wears on and you take those capture points. We see the Ogres pushing in heavy here. The Cathay defenders are a little bit all over the place. Their missiles aren't really defended, so Ogres having a pretty easy time here, getting the cavalry into them. Capture point to be had here. Looks like we're going to go for it. There is a terracotta sentinel to try and take out, though. A lot of holes in the wall over here. We can see the Cathay Sky Lantern there as well. The Ogres pushing in. There seems to be too many missile units for Cathay. I think this is a custom battle. We probably should have given them more melee troops, because they ain't got nothing to defend against all these Ogres with. They got a lot of good, well, a couple of good anti-large units. Do Cathay, they got the Jade Warrior Halberds and the Celestial Dragon Guard, who are kind of their elite anti-large unit, like Phoenix Guard or Black Guard of Nagaron, perhaps. And I imagine those units will be pretty imperative when it comes to fighting the Ogre Kingdoms as Cathay. But as for the siege settlement itself, I mean, it all looks great. It looks fantastic. It looks like a living city. But it's all a lot of kind of long, narrow alleyways and things, and a lot of choke points, which, you know, is cool and all, but I never understood why they don't put a little bit of open space in the siege settlements. Why not just give us a little battleground inside the settlement? Why does it all have to be choke points and narrow alleyways? Why can we just have a little bit of open space where we can maneuver? We could get a little bit of flanking done maybe, so we can use some kind of actual strategy and tactics rather than just having to choke point grind through everybody that gets in the way. The other issue that I'm kind of getting the feel of here is that it feels a little bit empty. Like, the settlement is so big now that it just kind of feels like a 20 stack isn't enough to fill it and have a proper siege war. I think you probably need 40 units to make this feel like anything like a proper siege, but obviously 40 units is a lot to handle, and you'd have to kind of slow down the game a bit. I suppose those will happen in campaign. I don't think many people are going to play sieges in multiplayer anyway, so you will have the opportunity to play some large armies in sieges, and maybe that's where the real fun is, when you've got a lot to micromanage and a lot of distance to cover and you've kind of got to rush around. Maybe then it wouldn't feel so empty. But we see some Lions going for the victory point here. And a little bit disturbingly, there's actually nothing back there defending the victory point. And they're going to have nothing that can go back there and defend it. So hopefully the AI in sieges is okay. That was always part of the reason I think that we didn't get 360 sieges. It's because the AI can't really navigate it that well. There's too many types of units and things that it's just a bit of a struggle. Hopefully they will defend their victory point better though in the final version. It can be a little bit easy and cheesy to win if you just kind of sneak a stalk unit in somewhere and run it to the victory point, perhaps. That's kind of what I do in Warhammer 2 sometimes, just to get through a siege if I can't be asked to play it. And I hate having to do that. I want to fight my sieges and find them fun, but in Warhammer 2, they're just not really that fun. Occasionally, if you get like 2 big armies, or 4 big armies rather, so it's like 40 units on 40 units in a big settlement, that can be fun. But unfortunately, those experiences are few and far between. But Ogres are inside now, but they're inside, but they didn't really siege. Like, maybe this is just a bad example of a siege. Because it's the Ogre Kingdoms, they're not going to have towers. They're large units. They can't go on walls, so all they can do is smash through the walls. But now they're inside, and there wasn't much of a siege element. It was just running up to the walls, breaking them down, and then killing everything in a land battle style, which is kind of the same as Warhammer 2, right? It's not really that different. Perhaps the wall breaker ability makes things a little bit too trivial. If you can just run up and bash all the walls down, there's really no point in the walls almost. We can see the Maw spell going off here. This is one of the Great Maw lore spellbooks for the Ogre Kingdoms. Looks pretty cool. Here it comes. We kind of looked away, but there we go. We can see it coming up. Some big old tusky claw things stabbing through the ground. Terracotta Sentinel going a bit nutty there. But yeah, not sure I'm completely sold on the new sieges. What do you reckon? How do you feel? I hate to put a downer on a exciting part of Warhammer 3, the siege rework. I think a lot of people had high hopes for, as did I, but I'm not sure they've been fulfilled here. But there's still time. It's still in development. Maybe if the walls are a bit tougher, so wall breaker units can't just smash through in like a minute or so. Maybe it should take 2 minutes or 3 minutes to actually get a wall down. And the AI probably could have actually done well here to just sit on the walls, because the Ogres wouldn't be able to go up on the walls. If they sat their infantry units, missile units, on the walls above them, there's nothing the Ogres could do about them, for the most part, unless the Noblars came along. So, seems like the AI may have missed a trick there. Instead of standing out in the open, they could have sat up on the walls and the Ogres wouldn't have been able to touch them. They could have just rained down fire from above. Aside from the siege itself, though, the Ogre Kingdoms are looking like a very cool faction and a very fun faction to play in battle. We see another Great Maw spell going off here. A giant fist. Bonk. That was an in-game noise. I didn't make that noise. It does a bonk when it lands. It's pretty cool. What can I say? And as for Cathay, they also look like a cool faction. As a defensive faction, this kind of thing should be their bread and butter, right? And the fortifications don't really seem to be that impactful. Like, from what I've seen, blockades and stuff that they put up, the blockers, they just get destroyed in like less than 30 seconds. They're really just, they don't do anything. Like, if they're not going to last a couple of minutes at least, then what's the point of them? It seems like a waste of supplies to pour it into those and then have them go away. There was a cannon tower just now, but I think it got destroyed. Hard to say what the AI is doing with all its supplies, though. Maybe it would be better if some of the blockers were indestructible or near indestructible. They have massive HP, so the attacker would have to just find another way. They just couldn't go that way. And then maybe you could be a little bit more tactical with the supplies and with the fortifications. And then maybe that would make them a little bit more fun to use, as they would actually have a decent purpose. So it's pretty much similar to minor settlement battles as well. I've got a video of one of those coming out at the same time as this, and you'll see pretty much the same thing again, just without walls. Although those perhaps seem a little bit more fun, as the maps are smaller. It does feel like you're kind of battling in a small space and there's more going on, rather than this big half-empty settlement. But it's nice to have improvements, right? Maybe they're not perfect. Maybe there is no way to make sieges really that fun in Total War Warhammer. And it's hard to say what makes a good siege. I think it's probably different for different people. If you're a Total War Warhammer only player, if you've never played historical and you've never experienced historical sieges, then you don't really have that frame of reference, and so you might enjoy this kind of siege and think it's just fine. But if you're like me and you've played historical for a long time, you've played a lot of fun sieges where you get to use your artillery and take your time, and the battles last a bit longer in historical titles typically, so there's a bit more of a grind and you can kind of get a bit more tactical, and I think that's maybe what's missing for me. I don't know, it's hard to say, but let me know what you think. Did you enjoy this kind of siege? Does it look like there's something missing? Did you ever play historical sieges, or are you a Warhammer only player? It'll be interesting to see what kind of opinions come from what kinds of people. And the last thing to notice, at the top of the screen you see the red bar is now slowly turning green. I guess that's the victory point, and when that goes entirely green, you win the battle. But there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. See you in the future.